In my experience, when fans of The Walking Dead talk about their favourite moments and story arcs from the show, I often find that its second season gets cruelly overlooked. In fact, I've heard a lot of people negatively refer to The Walking Dead's second chapter as the farm season, due to their disdain for what they perceive as an extremely slow 13 episodes which are all primarily set in one single location. Naturally, I didn't enjoy every single thing this season attempted, but I do believe the time spent at Hershel's farm is criminally underrated, and in this video I'm going to be exploring why I feel this way. Just a warning, there will be spoilers for the entire season throughout. So anyway, without further ado, let's begin. I think it's fair to say that in the Walking Dead comics, Hershel's farm is pretty much a non-event. I mean, sure, the foundations are there for a TV adaptation, Carl still gets shot and has to be treated, Hershel is also storing walkers in his barn who wind up escaping, and Maggie and Glenn still get together. However, all this takes place over a measly 4 issues of the comics before Hershel asks Rick to leave, with the story then swiftly moving on to the prison arc. It's fair to assume then that most fans who went into the second season of the show weren't expecting to have 13 episodes set at a place that barely featured in the source material. One of the most common complaints I see regarding the second season is from those who believe the farm setting is boring and dull. In a way, I can understand where those who share this opinion are coming from. I mean, when you take the big cityscape, the CDC, and even the Vatos hideout from the season prior to this one, it's clear that Season 2 covered a lot less ground than the explosive opening did in half as much time. However, just because the farm setting itself might not be the most interesting place in the world, doesn't mean the show still can't entertain and enthrall. Yeah, there was no guts moment or any trips to see a crazy scientist, but it didn't really matter because it was the characters themselves who were given a chance to shine this time around. Now, what I'm about to say may make you think I'm going a bit off topic, but just hear me out. So before writing the script to this video, I found myself reading a few articles online, examining the belief that when artists have strict limitations imposed on them regarding what they can create, it can often bring out their best creations due to said artists having to do the best they can with the resources they've been given. With this idea firmly in mind, it's fair to assume then that the team working on the second season of The Walking Dead knew that they couldn't have episodes filled with huge explosions and tons of walkers every week due to the budget constraints. However, it's because of these constraints that the show decided to turn its attentions to another area in order to fill this void. So instead of having a season full of big visual spectacle, the show instead made it a priority to focus on developing the relationships of its on-screen cast. If The Walking Dead had a similar budget to the first season during Season 2, then sure, maybe we would have moved on from the farm in half the time, and perhaps the installments would have been more action heavy, but would that have really been better than what we ended up with? I don't necessarily think so. Don't misunderstand me, I loved the first season of the show, but at times it did feel like it would have benefited from simply taking a breather, so I'm actually glad we were treated to a more slowed down affair the season after. Like I said, it's the characters who shine during the second chapter of the show. The majority of the new characters who are introduced are all interesting to watch, whilst those who were around since the beginning are afforded more time to grow and to become more real. I adored how Shane's and Rick's relationship fell to pieces before our very eyes. For me, I would say that Shane may well just be my favourite antagonist on the show, because I see him more as a tragic character than a straight up villain. Anyway, I'd love to spend the next 10 or so minutes talking about Shane, but I'm going to stop myself from mentioning him any further, simply because reminiscing about his time on the show has actually convinced me to publish an In Defense Of video centered on his character, meaning you can see me discuss his character's fall from grace in much more depth during the next week or so. Back to the topic at hand though, I also enjoyed the budding romance between Glenn and Maggie, due to the fact that their interactions together felt natural, with both being portrayed as likeable people. I admired the back and forth between the pair when it came to showing their feelings. For instance, at first Glenn was the one chasing Maggie, with Maggie seeming a bit aloof, even causing Glenn to question whether she really liked him at all. Then as time passed, Maggie was the one who was prepared to tell Glenn she loved him, leaving Glenn wondering if being with her was really the right thing to do. Love is never usually a simple thing, so it was nice that The Walking Dead didn't dumb down and streamline Glenn and Maggie's romance one bit. Daryl was another character who evolved from the season previous, portraying a more caring side as he put his life on the line to find Carol's daughter Sophia. Even Hershel, who came off as being a stubborn arsehole for much of the season, was redeemed when he realised what a fool he had been by denying the real horrors of what was unfolding around him. Finally, Rick was forced to kill 2 men during the episode in Nebraska, as well as his best friend Shane, causing him to drop the Mr. Nice Guy act at last. I mean, compare the people pleaser Rick of early season 2 to the Rick who tells everyone they are all infected during the last episode, and the difference in his personality is clear to see. Another criticism which I see unfairly thrown in Season 2's direction is the belief from some fans that not a lot happened. I think this misconception has arisen due to the fact that a lot of fans equate the season-long stay in one location, The Farm with a lack of story progression, but this really couldn't be further from the truth. In fact, I think this season has some fantastic moments, which rival the best parts of the entire show. Yes, you could say that the search for Sophia did go on for longer than it needed to, but you can't argue that the payoff wasn't brilliant. Seeing Shane lose it as Rick brought back walkers to the farm, with Herschel dropping to his knees as everyone put down the husk that remained of his family, was absolutely breathtaking. Then, to make things even more intense, Sophia hobbles out from the back of the barn, completely deflating the group who had been searching for her since the season premiere. You might not have enjoyed seeing Rick and Daryl constantly hunt for Carol's daughter, but I would argue that because the search for Sophia went on for so long, it actually made the emotional gut punch of seeing her as a walker all the more impactful. Even prior to this installment in which Rick and his group put an end to the walkers in Herschel's barn, nearly every episode always ended on some kind of big shocking reveal or revelation. The first episode ends with Carl being shot, the second with Shane and Otis surrounded by walkers, the third entry finished with us discovering that Shane had killed Otis in order to escape, episode 4 ends with Laurie finding out she's pregnant, the fifth wraps things up when Glenn finds walkers in the barn, and episode 6 leaves things with Laurie admitting to Rick that she slept with Shane. Admittedly, some of these may sound more pulsating than the others, but the point is each episode left me wanting to watch more. It wasn't a case of me being pissed off with a shitty cliffhanger like we've experienced as the years have gone by. Instead, the endings all had ramifications on the bonds the characters had with one another, and the cliffhangers themselves didn't come off feeling like cheap gimmicks. I should note I also really enjoyed the storyline which focused on what the group were going to do with the captured Randall. Whereas now I'll admit I'm a bit sick of seeing characters question whether they should kill or not 8 seasons into the show, due to The Walking Dead bringing up this idea over and over again. Back when this issue was first raised, however, it felt fresh and engaging. It made sense that with Season 2 being set during the early days of the apocalypse, characters weren't as trigger happy as they are now, and in a sense I don't think the viewers were as well. Whereas now I feel most fans of the show would be more inclined to tell Rick to shoot an outsider straight in the back of the head due to being constantly reminded of the horrible nature of people. Back in the beginning, I believe viewers would have more or less been split down the middle when it came to their feelings on whether letting Randall go or having him be killed was the right thing to do. Everyone probably knows by now I don't like Dale as much as others do, but even I can admit it was sad seeing him beg to spare a man's life only to have absolutely no support in the matter whatsoever. With Randall's introduction also came some great other moments. Episode 10, 18 Miles Out had a nail-biting fight scene take place between Rick and Shane, with it culminating with me genuinely believing that Rick was going to leave Shane to die in a bus surrounded by walkers. In addition, Better Angels finished this story arc in superb fashion, with Shane going completely insane, killing Randall just in order to orchestrate an opportunity to kill Rick. Also, before I move on, I found the finale to be a damn good installment, and it will be featuring in my top 20 Walking Dead episodes list, which yes, I am writing at the moment, so hopefully that doesn't take me too long to produce. And I must hold my hands up and say that I don't know why I put Chupacabra in my worst episodes list, because I went back and watched it recently, and you know what, it's not half bad at all. As much as I've sung Season 2's praises, I'm not going to pretend it's a perfect season of television. There's things that I don't like about it which I've already mentioned, and some that I haven't, such as the fact that I find Laurie to be plain unlikable throughout the entire season. However, I still don't feel this season gets the praise it quite rightly deserves. Maybe because I binged through the entire 13 episodes on DVD in a couple of days, I didn't experience some of the problems with pacing that those who watched it air on TV did. Or maybe it's just because I didn't necessarily mind that every episode wasn't as action-packed as the Fantastic Guts was in Season 1, due to the super dialogue and interactions between its characters. The fact remains that a lot of the characters who I went on to care about the most as I watched more of the show all won me over during its second season. Daryl, Maggie, Glenn, Herschel and Rick were all written well enough for them to go on to become some of my favourites, and in the case of Daryl and Maggie currently, I kinda wish they'd go back to how they were during this season. Of course, not all the characters were as well written as these were. I've already said I didn't care for Laurie, and the same can be said for Andrea, who was just a moron for much of her time on screen. I also found Cole to be extremely irritating. Honestly, what is it with The Walking Dead and annoying kids? And finally, Beth, who I did go on to like later down the line, was a bit of a non-starter. I briefly mentioned a moment ago the top 20 Walking Dead episodes video which I'm currently in the middle of writing, and one of the reasons it's taken me so long to do a follow-up to my worst episodes list is that because when I look back on these videos I often feel I've gotten something wrong. On the top 10 worst characters I put Jadis as number 1. I don't feel this way about her at all anymore. I've put Chupacabra as one of the worst episodes which I've already said I no longer agree with, and also if memory serves me I ranked the second season of The Walking Dead as number 5 when ranking the best seasons from 1 to 7. At this moment in time I don't know whether I do disagree with this placing or not, considering how much I like the seasons that ranked above it. However, I do feel that with it being in 5th position, some people may get the impression that I didn't enjoy this season as a whole, when in fact I did. One of my close friends who reads the Walking Dead comics said that he loves the first season of the show, but he then gave up during the second season as he found it so boring. It's an opinion I've actually seen echoed by others a few times, and if you feel this way, that's perfectly acceptable. I, on the other hand, don't subscribe to this chain of thought, and in fact I think when you consider the limitations imposed on the show before this season had even started, it turned out better than it had any given right to be. Fans of The Walking Dead owe it to themselves to give this season another look. It does so much right with its characters, and I wish the show could have emulated this during its last few iffy seasons. Season 2 is not the best season of The Walking Dead, but looking back on it again, I don't think it's a long way off the top. So there you go, there's a video on why I believe that Season 2 of The Walking Dead is underrated. Please let me know your thoughts below. Do you agree, or do you absolutely hate this season? As always, thank you very much for watching, and until next time, goodbye.